Hey there, David. Hi, David. Hi, Angel. I can't hear you. You're muted.
There we go.
There you go. Do I have feedback tonight? I'm just trying to check it out, making sure I'm not.
I don't hear any.
Oh, good, good. I went back to my old computer, so.
Oh.
About the new one. So I've got all my documents up on my new one. The old one is just zooming along. Hi, Carol. Is Dan on? I can't see him. There he is.
Hi there.
Does everybody hear me all right? No feedback and screwy electronic goof ups.
Good.
I do have my tech support in the next room, so.
Oh, there's Steve.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
But you're in the shadows.
Yeah, I
Yes,
don't know why it's so dark.
there he is.
Let's see.
You need a desk light there. There
Yeah,
you go.
trying to get better light here.
Probably because your light's above you instead of in front of you.
So there was a bad accident on 192. I'm not sure if anybody got caught up in that.
I did on my way back from the ranch this afternoon. I heard it was a motorcycle that lost control, had to be life flighted out of there. Didn't
Oh
look good.
dear.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I got there right as the first responders were getting there. It was not a pretty sight. The motorcycle had really gone off the road, ended up in the grass and tumbled several times. The rider went away from the bike. Let's put it to you like that. His day did not go as planned, I don't think.
no, that doesn't sound good.
It seemed to be all by himself. I didn't see any other vehicles there. From the position of the bike, I think he was coming eastbound on 192. For some reason, stayed instead of making that curve to the left and seemed to go right up the road and up into the grass. It was like a straight shot from eastbound to where he ended up. I don't know, there could have been involved or whatever, but I didn't see anything else there. So who knows?
Well, it's 6 o'clock. So at this point in time, I'll call the meeting to order. We are here for a workshop meeting of the Harmony CDD Board. Our main items on this workshop agenda is the reserve study that we contracted for and a discussion of our tree trimming policy that we are fine tuning at this point. So I will at this point call roll. Carol Castle,
Present.
Dan Lee.
Here.
Mr. Scarborough,
Present.
Mr. Bereavely,
Here,
and Kramer is here also. So we're all here and accounted for. I want to thank you very much, Mr. Schwartz, for coming today. Do we have anybody else on the call?
Tim Qualls is here.
Tim Qualls is here. Wonderful. This is our district council, Mr. Qualls. Do we have any members of the public here that might be interested in providing us with any public input? This would be our public input period. which is at the beginning of the meeting. You would have 3 minutes to give a brief public statement. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak to the board? Angel, do you have any requests for comments?
I do not. I'm looking at Gerhard's iPhone is on here. I don't know if that's an audience member. Other than that, I don't see anyone else.
Okay, so hearing no comments from the public, we'll move on to our main order of business this evening, which is the reserve study. We had requested that a reserve study be done, and Mr. Steve Schwartz is here tonight. He has been involved in conducting that reserve study, and I'm going to just turn it over to him so that he can walk us through the reserve study and help us to understand all that Harmony has to be responsible for. So, Mr. Schwartz?
Sure. Thanks, Teresa. So, yeah, before I even get to anything specific, I'll just kind of go over just kind of briefly just what a reserve study is, and what the intent of it is. So a reserve study is a long-term funding plan that projects all your capital expenses over 30 years and the funding necessary to meet those expenses. The intent of the reserve study is to give the CDD a roadmap, basically, with projections and funding, so they have the necessary amount of money at the proper time to make the repairs and replacements as necessary to their capital items. So, just a few examples of some items that would be included in the reserve study were things like resurfacing your pools, replacing roofs on pool cabanas, repaving the alleys that the CDD owns, repairing stormwater drainage structures, replacing docks and pedestrian bridges. So those are the types of items that are included in a reserve study and that you need to budget for, so you have the money long term to replace. Like,
Steve, can I interject just a minute?
sure.
I don't know who's managing the Zoom meeting, but could we put Steve up so we can focus on him and what he's saying? I think the agenda is pretty well
Let's
understood
see.
at this point.
Yeah, Steve, I could, I don't know if you have anything to present, or I could scroll through the study PDF that you gave us. As far as, I think if I stop sharing, then whoever's talking will take over. So that's up to you, Steve.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, Steve, you're back
Yeah,
on. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so a reserve study, like in your own, personal situation, think of like your own like reserves that you have in your house. So it's things like putting a new roof on your house, painting your house, maybe replacing like gutters or things like that, replacing your HVAC units, things like that. So for the association, it's generally bigger items, but that's the gist of what a reserve study is and what it covers. So you want to be able to have the money at the proper time to make the repairs and replacements. So with that little introduction there, I'll get into a little bit more specifics with the report. So the site was visited by myself and my coworker Paul Calizzi on August 20th. We submitted the first draft of the report October 29th, and then we submitted a revised version just yesterday, December 7th. The specific areas included in the report were alleys, Ashley Park, pool area and cabana, monuments, fencing, pavilions, stormwater drainage, the garden road, RV parking area, lake recreation area, which includes docks, boardwalks, and boats, basketball courts, playgrounds, parks, swim club, pool area, and cabana, and also maintenance vehicles. So overall, we found you have 155 different reserve items. So that's quite a few. It's a big community, and a lot of the items are totally different ages, built at different times. So it's a pretty complicated place overall. So the reserve study is effective, or will be effective October 1st of 2022. So right now we're in the 21-22 fiscal year, but it would go into effect, or some variation of it, next October. So essentially for the October 22-23 fiscal year. So let's see here.
Do you mind if I ask a question quickly?
Sure. Yeah, and anyone can just jump in too at their convenience.
Thank you. Is there any reason we didn't start this year? I know we're a little bit past the start of our fiscal year, but could you explain what the rationale was? Because that means we have to make a lot of assumptions about what we may do this year.
Yes, and just get into that too. So yeah, so in the reserve study, one of the things that it does is the starting point is your projected balance as of October 1st of 2022. So the latest financial that we have is from October 30th of 2021. So there's an 11-month gap there between where we are right now and then the start of the next year. So the assumptions that went into the report are kind of as follows. So on October 31st, you had $926,835. Your budget that for the 21-22 year is $66,540 for reserve funding. So to get to the October 1st of 2022, I have to forecast the projects that are included in the next over this 11-month period. So the projects that I'm aware of, and if there are more, you guys can jump in and let me know. But there's a pool project estimated to cost about $100,000. Going to be an asphalt mill and overlay of neighborhoods C1 and C2. And that's projected to be about $130,000. There's the payment for the footbridges that when I was out at the site in August, they were being replaced. So it's my understanding they've been replaced, and you guys just have to pay for it. So that's $38,000. And then also the stabilization of the garden road, and that cost isn't fixed or anything, but it's projected to be in the ballpark of $150,000. So with those projects being deducted from the starting point of $926,000, that leaves you $574,917 as your projected starting balance. Are there any projects that you guys are planning on over this next year that should be included in that list, or is that a pretty accurate reflection of it?
I think does anybody, the only thing I can think of in addition to those might be, and I don't know, since this is not an actual hard infrastructure, it's more of our responsibility to the water management district, is our mitigation of and care of the conservation areas. That's ending up every time we look at it to be more and more of a big ticket item. So if we were at some time to need to go in and do a large mitigation, I think the last estimate we had, and I don't know if Carol, you, Mike, or Steve, I think it was about $365,000 if we hit it hard and fast once.
263 for the 5 transects that they initially identified, and we've since found out that those may not be too applicable, but whatever it is, it's a significant amount of money when you go in there and do that. And the whole area affected has grown significantly, as we found out.
Right. So I don't know if that's something that needs to be added to or considered, but
When you
that
say
is-
like that mitigation, are you talking about like intrusive like
yes,
plants or?
Yeah.
it's invasive plants into
Invasive.
our conservation areas that were required to be set aside and preserved by the Water Management District.
How about our interior tree project, which is coming up here? If we got a tree management decision to make after this, but I suspect that if we're going to get into trees hot and heavy, that, and it sounds like we need to, that may get fairly pricey as well.
That's correct. Yeah, and that's one thing Harmony has in addition to the hard infrastructure, we have the natural infrastructure that, because it's within the community and we have responsibilities for it, it can get rather expensive to maintain.
And are these items that you have budgeted for outside of reserves, or should be accounted for in reserves?
Um,
To a limited degree, they're within the budget, but a massive undertaking like the tree project, which we haven't shaped up yet, certainly is outside of budget. And that all depends on where we end up with that. But it needs to be done without a doubt.
Right. We have not budgeted for that large scale project. We have done tree trimming in the past, but not to the extent that we're looking at. So that may be something we look forward to. The way they're proposing to go forward on the tree trimming, it will probably end up being part of our regular operation and maintenance. They want to put us on a 4-year cycle
Okay.
and have it timed in. The old world climbing for the invasive plant issue will also be an ongoing O&M cost, but it may be a situation where we may need to do a large mitigation up front in order to catch up with it, so we can do it as ongoing O&M.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So, I mean, just from what you guys are saying here, I mean, these do sound probably more like maintenance, but yeah, I see
There's
that.
already an existing line item for trees, but not so for the mitigation.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the only way maybe it could be reserves would be, yeah, if you did like a one-time, first project for the mitigation. But if my thought tends to be, if you're planning to pay for that out of operating ongoing, it's probably just easier to just pay for it out of operating. That way you have some consistency of where that money is coming from.
Okay, so go ahead, Steve.
Steve, this is David Hamps. There is one more thing. I just got a proposal today to do some pipe cleaning and CCT inspection for the estates. I'm heading to the office now to know what that price is. I'll share it with you tomorrow. But that was something I believe that was unplanned by the CDD. Whether that's considered maintenance or reserve item, I don't know at this time. So,
That goes under stormwater, right?
yes.
So yeah, I'm not sure if that was specifically, I can't remember if I saw that in the report for the reserve study or not, but
Yeah, so in the report, we do have stormwater drainage, and it's meant to be pretty large scale repairs. So I guess it just depends on the extent. I mean, like to me, like cleaning of the pipes and general inspections is more operating and maintenance, but repairing or replacing, like when a stormwater structure breaks or a pipe cracks or something like that, that tends to be more what I think of as the reserve part of the stormwater drainage.
Okay, that's good. So I think you've got most of our projects,
Okay.
unless we decide, we find we need to go do the big hit. So
Okay.
right now we're on good grounds.
most other projects that have come up, we've kind of, our thinking has been to table them until after this reserve study has been completed. So I think that's everything.
All right, good. Okay. Yeah, so back to the report, just where what we're discussing. So, so the projected balance is about $575,000. So from that as the starting point. Carol, is your hand up?
It is. Sorry, I didn't know if you were continuing. I had a few
Oh,
questions.
no problem.
They can wait.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
One of the things you have, a very important item is on page 6. You say at the current time, the district is considered to be 24% funded, but there's no explanation of how you came about that number.
Yeah, okay. So that's actually just what I was leading into. So, so from the starting point of 575,000, all the expenses are plotted out. So, so you take the current cost of the expenses, and then in the course of the report, there's an inflation factor of 2.5% per year. Over the 30-year window. So all the expenses are projected out with inflation. So what you, how you get to the number of what you need is you have to figure out, what is the adequate amount of money per year that will offset these expenses. And then, so there are different ways to do that. You can do it, just one number flat straight through, which I don't like to do that way. Or you can do it where it increases, at some amount, like 2% or 2.5%. So that's the route that, we went with this. So I can show you on, let's see here, on page, so on page 58, it's the projection year by year. So it shows like the annual reserve assessment, and then the annual expenses per year, how much interest you gain, and then the net reserve funds are essentially your year-end balance. So all these things considered, you have to come up with a number with small increases that's enough to offset these expenses and maintain a reasonable balance. So the way the report stands right now for 2028, for instance, that's when you have a lot of expenses projected. So we need a number that's going to be sufficient to offset that. So in 2028, starting with assessments of $317,900 with slight increases. You can get to the point where you have enough money to pay for all those expenses. So that's the general framework of how this is calculated.
So that means that our percent funded goes up and down depending on the year that major expenses come due.
Yeah, and right, and especially that year where we're forecasting you have over $1 million in expenses, that's when your reserves take a hit, in a big way. But that also shows too why it is important to plot these things out, over the long term, because, in the meantime, like you have, right now you have $900,000, and by the start of next year, you'll have about $575,000, which, on the surface seems like, hey, that, could be a reasonable amount of money, but you really have to compare it to what's coming down the pipe, for those future years. So I mean, like, as it goes on, down the road to 30 years, that's more difficult to, pinpoint, but really, of major significance is the first, I'd say 8 to 10 years, to get through the major projects.
Okay, so right now we're not in a horrible shape, especially since we have big projects coming up this year.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing you can do with reserves is give yourself time. I mean, if you had a $400,000 or $500,000 or $800,000 project, next year, like that would deplete almost all your reserves. Or even worse, if you had a $1.5 million project next year, and you're only starting with anywhere from $500,000 to $900,000, you would say, well, gosh, how are we going to pay for that? The difference. Are we going to have to delay it? Are we going to have to modify the project? And and those things will happen too. I mean, you will, find projects that are scheduled 5 years out that you say, hey, maybe it's in better condition than we expected, and we can push it off 2 years. And the opposite is true too. I mean, sometimes something is projected for 5 years, and after 3 or 4 years, it's not in good shape. But the main things are to try to forecast your major expenses and ensure that there's enough money there to meet those obligations.
Okay, so we use this to basically communicate with our residents and explain to them what the future looks like, and if we want to avoid a major assessment for a big ticket repair or replacement, then we would start slowly asking the residents for a little more so we could put it in the bank and save it up for that, just like we would if we thought we needed to replace our roof in 5 years. Is that?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, right, this is your justification to set the dues or assessments, where they need to be, whether that's higher or lower, because exactly, like that's the thing. I mean, in community, sometimes I hear too, they're like, well, hey, like that's the way the dues have always been, but that's not a good enough answer. That
Right.
It's not a matter of, hey, we don't want to raise dues. I mean, no one wants to, but that's why you have to do some long range planning to know that you're on the right track, or getting close to those targets, because that's the thing. Like, your community is right around 20 years old in the oldest parts. I mean, it came on in different sections, but once you get to 10 years, a lot of things need to be repaired and replaced, and some of the longer items, even if they're not replaced at 10 years, they're almost certainly to be replaced at 20 or 25 years. So you know, for some of these items, you're replacing it a second time. And, you know, I mean, when you start from scratch and everything is new, those first few years, you're not going to have a lot of expenses. But, you know, if you're not getting ahead, eventually that's going to catch up when you have a lot of expenses. So that, you know, that's kind of what we're looking at now. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, there's no any one unmanageable expense. You know, the biggest expenses are, you know, what you may do eventually with like the RV parking area, if you turn that into an asphalt surface. And likewise, if you know, make an asphalt garden road, whether it's, sounds like, I guess it can't be in that same spot, but if it's in a different spot, you know, maybe it could be asphalt. And the thing is too, I mean, that's something that sounds like it's possible a developer may share some of those costs. So that would be majorly beneficial, you know, to you guys, and you know, that would change the numbers quite a bit. But, you know, even with that being said, you still kind of have to have some conservative planning from the standpoint of, I wouldn't say this is a worst case scenario or anything like that, but it's conservative in the respect of like, hey, you're planning to eventually pay for it yourself. So if, with that being the case, it's like, this is the resulting plan from that.
Right. So are there any other questions just at this break, at this juncture for Steve? Okay, Steve, if you want to continue on talking, if
Sure.
about, do you want to go through specific things or other information?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So I discussed kind of a lot of the background with it, and yeah, if you guys would like me to go through specifically like each of the sections, I'm willing to do that. Or if it's just more of an overview, that's fine too.
Does anybody have a preference or an area that you would like? Carol? You're muted.
I'm assuming that everybody's pretty much taken a look at the reserve study and the revised reserve study. So I just have some questions about some of the items in the reserve study,
Okay.
including the, you know, you just addressed the asphalt paving in those two areas, and I don't, you know, so I'm not going to address that now. But just two things really that came up for me as I was reviewing it, in addition to what I've mentioned. About the, on page 9, you said, in conversation with management, it's recommended to plan for approximately 2,400 square feet of sidewalk repairs every 3 years. But now, you know, I don't know, Brett and Mr. Hamstra, you can, you know, you're more the experts on this. It seems to me like we've done a lot more than that in the last couple of years. Of course, we hadn't been doing a whole lot, but it seems like now's the point at which, due to, you know, tree growth, roots, et cetera, that it's going to be considerably more than that. So I wanted to bring that up.
Did you say square feet or linear feet?
Square feet, I think. I
Well,
don't
that's-
know. Was it square feet? Hold on, let me just go there to page
If
9.
it's square feet, that's nowhere near enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is listed as square feet, 2,400 square feet. Steve, Steve Berube, do you remember how many square feet this last major repair we did? It's eluding me.
It
right
was
10,000,
12,
9,000?
yeah, it was 1,200, I'm sorry. It was $9,600 at $12 a square foot. So that would be 800 square feet, right? Yeah. So we've been doing it in patches of 800 square feet for $9,600 at a time. And we have done that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times probably in the last couple of years. So that's 4,000 square feet, and we really haven't put a dent in it yet.
Yeah.
2,400 square feet. What was it? 2,400 square feet every 3 years? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah, that strikes me as being really, really, really low. Brett, I think you have some numbers on this, don't you? Did you do a survey of where we are for sidewalks as far as quantity, or we haven't gotten that far yet?
I think we're working on that. David had provided maps of what was owned by the district. We were currently going through and identifying what grinds we needed to make and what pads need to be replaced. Most of the pads are 5-foot pads width-wise, and on average, they're 6-foot pads. So it's a 30 square foot pad, or pretty close to a 30 square foot pad. So if you take that number of 2,400 square feet and just divide it by 30 square feet, you're looking at only 80 pads being replaced every 3 years. That's not enough.
No, not even close.
And what would you suggest the number be? Or Mr. Hamstra, what's your suggestion?
Last month, we did a community-wide.
You just muted yourself.
We did a community-wide sidewalk inventory, and then we broke it into 4 sectors or 4 areas. And we had the total linear feet and square yards for each sector. So I'll share that with Steve, and maybe we'll bump up that number a lot higher to be more indicative of what we're going to experience because of the trees and the age of the area. So Steve, I'll provide you a final number now that we got completed about a month ago. So.
Okay.
And then my second
Everywhere.
question.
Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
I was just saying, I mean, that most of those sidewalks have oaks, I mean, like right next to them. So it's maybe more than you're used to budgeting for, Steve.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's fine. I mean, and yeah, with trees, unfortunately, you're at that nasty age, because once they start to get about 15 to 20 years, that's when they get the root systems and all that. So yeah, that can be a major problem.
So you're
There's
gonna
one
need
right
a
over the sewer
number-
line of my house. Sorry, go ahead.
The number for these sidewalks, it appears that about $12 a square foot seems to be the going rate in this area. So, I know you need some footage and some pricing. So $12, give or take a few, should give you a rough idea of where that line item needs to end up.
We currently budget 15K a year. So if we're saying that's, 12 per, that's, not much over 1,000 square feet a year. So kind of in line with what what we had in the study, but I think we're all agreeing that's not quite high enough.
Yeah, we're behind the curve at this moment significantly. I think once we get caught up, first year or two, then that lower number will probably hold out. But we're behind. We haven't done much with sidewalks for this year, so the catch up is going to be painful.
Okay, so we'll move on.
I do have another question.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm sorry for my fax machine just rang and it's ringing again. So sorry for that. It's just going to interrupt us for a moment. On page 30, you have, Steve, you have separated out the dock and boardwalk. And I'm still a little confused as to which is which, but you have boards and railings versus frame and structure. And for the estimated remaining life for dock boards and railings as 4 years, but the frames and structures at like 23, 24 years. And I'm just thinking about the experience we just went through with our pedestrian bridges. And we have some frame and structure issues we had to address. I'm asking because the pedestrian bridges are the same age as the boardwalks and the docks. And I just want to make sure that we have evaluated the frames and structures of the, the existing conditions of the frames and structures of the boardwalks and docks, because those are high numbers. So I'd like the reserve study to, and I know there's only so much you can see and evaluate from a walkthrough, but I'm just concerned about that. I wanted to bring it up.
Okay, yeah. So in the first version, yeah, I had, during the site visit, I had looked at all the docks and boardwalks, but for whatever reason, I didn't put one of them in there. So in this latest version, there's the western dock and boardwalk, the central dock and boardwalk, and then the east dock. So I just want to clear that part up. Generally, what I do and what I've seen in other communities is that with like the docks and boardwalks, usually you'll replace the boards and one time before you do a major frame overhaul or rebuild it altogether. So, for what you're saying about the pedestrian bridges, that's not uncommon that you replace the boards and then maybe did a little bit of repairs to the frame. But I would plan for, one or two more times with replacing the boards before you would rebuild it. In the same with docks too. Like, you hope to just replace the boards, make repairs as necessary. And then the structure, since it's not, it's not being walked on and it's not exposed to sun nearly as much, it tends to hold up better. And but with all these things, it does kind of depend on the environment too. But
Right.
But as a general rule, yeah, you plan to replace the boards and railings once, maybe twice, and then the frame altogether down the road. So that's kind of the rationale behind how we have this.
And Carol, just for clarification, the structural repairs we had to do on the footbridges were actually not to the structure of the footbridges themselves, but were to the the sidewalk approaches to the footbridges. Those are what we had to come in and use the flowable fill and to bring that up and to support those, because they had been washed out by a lot of erosion. There was a lot of drainage that was misdirected into that area. The actual wooden support was in good shape. And I think I'm certainly hoping we're going to get another, 15 or so years out of those. So I guess the east dock is the fishing pier and boat dock, Steve. And
yes, yeah. So right, so the east dock is the one of the composite material,
yes.
And that was and that one's older, but given its age, it's in pretty good condition. It's I think 16 years old approximately, and still original. Whereas the other just regular wooden ones are about different ages, but about 10 to 12 years old, and had more deterioration.
Right, and it's interesting to see the deterioration. The boards that are under the tree canopy and out towards the end are better protected, it seems, and are degrading less rapidly than the ones that are immediately adjacent to the concrete approaches. That section, I guess it's about a 6 or 8 foot section on each one, is showing deterioration similar to the footbridges, which we may end up doing a partial on that before we get to the point where we have to completely redeck and rail it.
Yeah, and that's, I'd probably advise you to do that too. I mean, that's not uncommon. Like I see sometimes in other communities too, where if you really stay on top of it, you can make partial repairs to the decking, usually for a while. But it does just kind of depend on the environmental conditions and things. But yeah, I mean, you don't like to have to replace all of it, but only when it gets to that point. But yeah, in general, I try to say, yeah, if you can just replace some boards, then do that too. But yeah, although eventually it does wear out. So
Yeah, I
But-
think your values of about 4 years from the beginning of this study, which means another 5 years for the entire redecking, is
Yeah.
probably pretty spot on. We're going to have to do those first 6 or 8 feet probably pretty soon within the next year or so. But I think, again, I think it's the protection from the tree canopy, which helps a lot, keeping all that hard sun on it, that sun rabbit.
Yeah, it's interesting just from looking at other communities. I'm usually surprised when I see new stuff when it's just regular wood, because it just seems like the composite stuff does tend to hold up with the weather in Florida much better than just the regular wood. I mean, if you stay in the wood, that helps too. So I mean, there is that route to go on some of it, but my preference would be to try to put the composite materials on there.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions? Carol, do you have more questions about different items?
No, that was it for me.
Okay.
Oh, just one more thing. It wasn't really a question. Well, I guess it was a question. In the original draft, you had figured interest on the reserve amounts, and I didn't see it this time. And I'm glad not to see it, because we've been earning like 0.05%. And so it didn't seem to really make sense to factor even 0.5% of interest in there. So just wanted to confirm that you left that out.
Yeah. So right. So this version. Yeah, I gave you, actually, wait, that's the tax rate. Let me check here. I think I ran it with 0.5%. Let me check.
Well, I know we had discussed that, but we haven't been earning anywhere near 0.5% for years. So.
Oh, okay. Because
That
yeah,
may change, but because we're a government entity, we're, constrained.
the initial version had 1%. The revised version, I used 0.5%. But yeah, I'll take your feedback if you think it should be lower or zero. Yeah, I can do it with those numbers as well.
Do the rest of you agree with me?
Yeah.
For numbers?
I do. I've been watching
Interesting come into it.
abysmal. Yeah, I think if we calculate 0 and then we get something more than that, then it's gravy. Anybody else?
That sounds good.
Great. Mike Scarborough, do you have any items that you had concerns about or wanted to discuss or had questions of? Mike?
He was on, looks like he disconnected.
Oh,
Yeah,
and
it
me.
looks like it's gone.
Okay, Dan, how about you?
Nothing specific. I reviewed it. Nothing jumped out at me as I understand pretty clearly what we're showing here.
Okay. Mr. Berube?
All good.
Okay. Any of the staff, any other questions, things we see that may need to be included that aren't, or that are included and need to be adjusted?
Just one quick comment. This is Tim. The report, the study refers to amenities and common areas. And I think I saw dues somewhere or fees, but districts have facilities and projects, not HOA terms of amenities and common areas. That could just be confusing to the public if they read the study. So a minor thing, but I think has some important weight to it.
Yeah, could you say that again? So common areas?
Yeah, so
and-
HOAs manage common areas and amenities. That's not terms that CDDs use in Chapter 190. CDDs maintain infrastructure, systems, and facilities. It's just one little paragraph where you mention common areas and amenities. Just change that to systems and facilities.
Okay, yeah, I think I got it, because, right, yeah, in HOAs, right, it's dues, and in CDDs, it's assessment, so that's something I was trying to change too, but yeah, okay, so I'll change common areas and amenities to facilities and systems and infrastructure.
Okay, my apologies. I missed all of that. Some reason my other computer just shut down, so I'm back again.
You better get a new IT guy.
I know, I'm trying. The other one's rebooting right now, so what can we say?
This happens to you every time.
Because Zoom is imperfect. It's nice, but yeah, sometimes my computer acts up with it too. So sometimes I do it on my phone. So
Yeah, well, at least I have video.
At least you have video. I can't get this thing. I used to have the rear camera used to work. Now I got no cameras on Zoom. I don't know. Craziness.
All right.
I'm just glad it's not me.
Pardon?
I said, I'm just glad that I'm not the one that's having the problem.
I'll share. All right, do we have any other questions, comments, or just information for Mr. Schwartz?
So Steve, this is David. So I'll get you the revised sidewalk quantities in order to bump up enough accordingly.
all right.
And a real minor comment as well. You referenced Southwest Florida. It's actually, we're in South Florida Water Management District.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll make that change.
All right. Thank you, sir. Otherwise, very, very detailed. Very detailed. Thank you.
David and Steve, just an FYI, in your inboxes will be the sidewalk maps that were completed and sent over.
Okay.
With the
We do
spreadsheet-
have a lot of sidewalks. I'm sorry, David.
I believe the latest version, Brett, has the spreadsheet within the exhibits, right, with all the quantities.
I found the last email you sent over to us. There was a Google link with attachments.
Because what I gave in person to Angel on a flash drive or a thumb drive was the final version. So I'll check
Just
what you
double
sent.
check it and resend it if that's fine.
Sounds good. Thank you, Brett.
No problem.
Okay, Mr. Schwartz, would you like to give us a kind of a wrap up if you have anything, or?
Sure. Yeah, so, kind of the big takeaways, overall right now, the projection is, or the estimate is that you're 24% funded. So that's not in a great position. What helps though, I mean, you do have about $600,000. So that does give you, some amount of money to be able to do projects in the short term and in medium term. So, over time, I'd like to see the funding go up, and it probably will, and I guess it really needs to do some of the things coming down the pike. I guess one other thing maybe I should point out in the report that I think be valuable to to you guys in your planning when you're looking at this is starting on page 72, there's an expense summary by year. So that it's a good snapshot of all the projected expenses, year by year. So, just something to like, even if, you get questions from members of the community, okay, well, like, hey, what are we planning to do? This is kind of an easy snapshot to say, okay, well, yeah, for 2023, we're planning to do these 8 projects for a total of $135,000. These 9 projects for 2024 for $51,000. So, so I think that's pretty valuable to you. Yeah, so the projected reserve funding as it stands right now is $317,900 next year, but that's going to change a little bit based on some of these other comments, and then also the sidewalk quantities as well. But it should be pretty close to that. Since we're removing the interest, it'll go up a little bit, but not a ton. So that's, in general, this is in the ballpark of probably where it's going to land.
Great. Well, thank you so much. We look forward to seeing the finalized version of the reserve study and having something to plan for our future. Thank you so much, Steve.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right. So at this time, we will move on. Again, remind anybody who may have tuned in that we are in a workshop. We are not in a decision-making meeting. This is just fact gathering and discussion. There will be no decisions made at this meeting whatsoever. So we will move on to the next item of the agenda unless anybody else has any more questions or comments before we move forward. Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the tree trimming. Okay. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Schwartz. You're welcome to stay if you would like, but if you have other things to do, we'll see you later.
Okay, yeah, nice talking with you guys.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, Mr. Perez, do you want to start us off with tree trimming?
Sure. So, obviously we've put a lot of time and effort and energy into reviewing, what scopes would be the proper verbiage and would cover the vast majority of the needs at Harmony CDD. So, that being said, we have worked closely at the direction of the board with Matthew Pippin from B&B Tree Services to develop a scope of services for tree pruning of the street trees. And actually recently he came out and did a test tree, which I think came out very, very well done and very professional. And, it was nice. I mean, he was very, very courteous with our requests and very timely with getting it accomplished. So, where we're at now is the discussion needs to take place of how we want to proceed. I know there's been discussion of retaining an arborist full time on with the district. There's also been a strong consideration and a recommendation from Mr. Pippin that to move forward with this tree plan, we need to make sure that we have an inventory for these trees. So that way, we're getting apples to apples quotes. And we know how many trees are in the community that we being the district would be responsible for trimming. So, he has provided that information in a proposal. Obviously, again, we cannot just, vote on anything in this meeting, but it will be in the agenda packet next week. So, again, I do think it's something you need to strongly consider. I know Tim has worked hard on it as well and putting somewhat of a language to it for a contract when we do go to an RFP, if that's decided upon. Teresa, does that help?
And what I wanted to let everybody know, I was lucky enough to go out there when Mr. Pippin was here. And it was a true pleasure to watch a professional. It was just so shockingly different from what I sat and observed when Cervella was out here doing our tree trimming. He has equipment that you can't even imagine. He was able to position the lift exactly on, one set of the supports went onto the sidewalk, which we own. The other went onto the street. He was very careful in extending the lift to the branches that needed to be taken. And these branches were actually brushing up onto the resident's house. He very carefully took them down in sections and taking each of the sections over to the right-of-way area and dropping absolutely nothing but a few of the already dead small oak leaves onto the resident's property. The safety gear was phenomenal. The coordination between himself, his wife is his assistant, I guess, and they worked very well. I was very proud to see them operating here in Harmony, and he was able to take some decent sized limbs that were, like I said, brushing against the house, take them down and back. He very carefully explained that certain of the branches would continue to grow upward, and he was able to prune this tree in a way that you couldn't even tell it had really been pruned. It looked so nice. It was not one of these power line cuts where half of the tree is missing. And if anybody wants to go out and look, the address is, I think, 3322 Catbrier. And it was really impressive. I look forward to seeing either him or someone of his caliber doing the work here in Harmony. And it's so nice to know that he is so close to Harmony, just down the road. So that's all I have to say. We have worked together. Brett and Mr. Pippin provided some verbiage. And Tim, do you want to go over now the actual tree policy that you put together for us to consider at this month's meeting?
I'm happy to, Madam Chair. It's pretty self-explanatory. It sounds like, the main things are the standard by which you're going to prune the trees, letting the citizens know that the district is going to have a comprehensive plan and discourage the residents from taking matters into their own hands. So you guys wanted shorter from that 80-page one. This is a 3-page one. It doesn't sound like you're going to have much of an issue with having to get homeowner consent, because it sounds like, and I remember Mr. Pippin saying this at the last workshop, that he's very thorough and can do this. So you guys are just going to notify people when the tree trimming is going to take place. You're going to let them know that you're going to do a good job. And if there comes a situation where one tree presents a special challenge where you would want to get the consent, then that would be the time to raise that, in our opinion. I think if you sent this consent form to everyone, you're just going to freak people out, because they're going to see, oh, we have to waive liability. So again, I think the tree policy is very straightforward, plain language. Happy to address any questions. No pride of authorship. If you guys want to make any tweaks or changes, I'm here to take notes.
I have a couple tweets. On what page is this? Hold on a second. It's on page 1. Under section 2, third paragraph, at the end of the first line, there's a period. I believe it should be a comma because it's a sentence fragment. Looks like it should be, when it's required to trim or remove hazardous trees and or limbs over private property, comma, these operations will be conducted with due care, etc. So it looks like there's supposed to be a comma there and not a period. because otherwise it doesn't quite make sense.
Ugh.
It makes sense to you?
Yes,
Tim?
that definitely is.
Section 2, page 1, section 2, third paragraph. You
Okay,
there, Tim?
yeah, I'm here.
No, I mean, are you looking at the section?
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up the document and the waiver popped up instead, so I don't want to waste your
Here.
time. So
Oh,
let me
I
just,
can't share my screen, so.
let me write that. Say that again, the
Yeah.
section.
Page 1, section 2, paragraph 3.
Okay, add a comma.
Instead, remove the period at the end of the first line and make it a comma, and then the next line has a lowercase t at the beginning of the first word instead of an uppercase. Make sense?
Okay, got it.
All right, the second one is on page 2, second paragraph, last sentence. It currently says trees will not be trimmed in a consistent manner. Well, if the sentence starts, or paragraph starts, when property owners take it upon themselves, et cetera, and then trees will not be trimmed. So my suggestion is to change the will to would. So when private property owners take it upon themselves, blah, 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 trees would not be trimmed in a consistent manner and the work will not meet the required standards. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Okay, to replace will with would. And finally, on page 3, last paragraph, second to last line, it references a root gauging outbreak. And I don't know what that is. And if we're creating this for the benefit of residents, maybe, I don't know if gauging is the correct word there. Maybe it's gouging. I don't know. I don't know what the correct word is there.
I pulled that from Pippin's report. I'll make sure I get it right.
Okay. That was,
For
those
deciding,
were,
maybe?
what?
I think what that is when, and Brett, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is my understanding, when the roots start growing together of all of our oak trees that are along a street, the trees actually become as one tree along that whole section of street. And if we had to do a lot of root work, then we might have trouble with it spreading from tree to tree. Is that right, Brett? Or am I stretching?
I think the word is supposed to be grafting.
Okay.
So when the
A
roots
root
graft
grafting
together, those are
outbreak?
the roots of grafting.
So if the roots graft together and then we have a disease get in one tree that's been improperly pruned, then it can spread to the whole tree, the whole section of street trees. And so this would be a major production for us to get it under control. But
Maybe the word should.
we'll have Brett get back in touch with Mr. Pippin since it's his language and get something that's more understandable, especially since Brett and I and Tim are all struggling with it.
Otherwise, I just want to say it looks great. Thank you for winnowing it down to something that's really reasonable and much easier to understand for most people. So thank you. I appreciate it. And the waiver and consent looks good too.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other comments on the tree trimming?
Yeah, I've got a question, and I know this has been discussed at certain times before, but this seems like a good time to go over it again. So neighborhoods F, H2, and O, looking at the property appraiser's site, I'm not sure who owns those trees. The property line goes to the sidewalk, and then the right of way for the street is, it doesn't show up as a record on the property appraiser like it does for the HOAs, for the lakes neighborhoods, or the little strip with the trees everywhere else that we have.
Yes, Dan, those are county, and actually the county owns those trees. But we probably should touch base with the county and find out what their tree maintenance policy is and what they will be doing here in Harmony. to know whether those trees, whether we will need to look at if it needs to be an interlocal agreement or some other way to address those also. So, Brett, I hate to add more to your to-do list.
That's okay. Well, I was gonna ask again, what, there was F, H, and O were the neighborhoods? Did I hear that?
H2, yeah, H2. H1, it looks like the CDD has the usual strip with the trees on it.
So
But
the neighborhood
H2 and
is,
F, yeah, H2 and F, and I think those two were the ones that were blended when they were first platted out, and I can't remember if
What about O, Waterside?
yeah, O is
Yeah,
the same way.
Waterside's county. But I can get with you, Brad, and or Dan, can you send him a graphic that shows those
Sure,
three
I'll put
streets,
that
or
together.
just the, yeah.
Yep.
You're really good with those graphics, so.
Teresa, in case you have a, I mean, I know we're probably almost done, but in case you have a set of headphones that might work better sound-wise on that particular computer.
I will do that.
In general, the neighborhoods with the newer design streetlights, meaning the upside down U loop on the top, all got deeded, those sidewalks and the easements from the sidewalk to the street, all got deeded to the county when those were set up. And that's why the streetlights look different, the sidewalks look different, and that easement looks different, is because Starwood put it all with the county.
Right, so again, it's Waterside, which I think easiest, Dan, if you could put a quick graphic together for Brett so he can see those three. It's basically 4 streets.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments?
I want to say that the agreement looks pretty good. I had the same punctuation concerns and whatever, but I figured that it would get squared away at some point. But good catch, Supervisor Castle.
Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Scarborough, any comments?
No, I don't have any. This obvious. I mean, this is obvious rhetorical stuff, but this would be replacing Cervello's service, correct?
That's correct. For at least those trees in the right of ways. As we go forward and talk about our new scope of service for our next landscaping RFP, then we can consider then whether we want our landscape provider to take care of the trees that can be reached with like a pole saw easily in our parks and other areas. But for those trees that are adjacent to our residences and who need to be majorly trimmed back, we're going to definitely need a certified arborist to take really good care of those trees.
So obviously, without the RFP, we don't have any cost. Well, we know what we pay Cervello, but I would expect this to be significantly more, would we not? Coming from a certified arborist?
We'll see. The first step that we probably need to do is that tree inventory. And again, I think you'll see that proposal. I'm hoping that we will have that proposal for our next meeting, where he proposes to go through, evaluate the trees. Then the trees would be put on a priority schedule. There will be some that need to be done right away and whatnot. He has given us just a ballpark cost right now, which seems that we could possibly do our phased work on our trees for possibly close to what we're doing with Cervello now. Okay. So I don't know that it's going to go up that much. I was really impressed at the ballpark numbers he gave us, like the tree that he came out and did individually the other day just to show us what he's able to do. That in his cost sheet is $50.
Okay.
And that was trimming it, taking it away, all the safety, blocking the street where it was needed, just everything. And like I said, I was just amazed.
I have a
But also
question.
it costs that
Sorry.
much to set up the machine.
I just had a question as to whether we're getting multiple bids on the tree inventory.
We can, yes. I can reach out to other vendors and ask for it.
I think it's appropriate just because that's our policy.
Yeah, and I think it was just such a quick turnaround that we asked for the quote and we did receive it. It is in the agenda pack, and then we can move forward with getting additional quotes as well.
Thank you.
Okay, any further questions or comments? Okay, and I'm sorry if I'm talking loud, but I can't hear myself, so.
Well, you don't, yeah, it looks like your headphones don't have a microphone, which was really the purpose for putting headphones in. So that
Yes.
your voice would go through your headphones and not directly through the computer, but.
Right, my apologies. I'm working on this. I pulled out the mic headphones and the jack doesn't fit anymore, so fine tuning these things. So I appreciate everybody's patience with my technical difficulties. Anything else we need to discuss on this item? Hearing nothing, anything else that anyone wants to bring before the board for discussion only, no decisions before we leave?
I don't
Okay.
have anything.
Pardon?
Is that Angel?
Angel?
Nope, I don't have anything. Thank you.
And just to let you know, Angel, I have this recording on my my laptop. I'll try and get that recording and the ones from the previous Zoom meetings sent to you in the next day or two.
Okay, perfect. Thanks so much.
Okay. Hearing no further business or discussion before the board, I would entertain a motion to adjourn unless someone feels otherwise. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Oh, I guess we don't make decisions, right? We just say goodbye, Tim.
Goodbye.
That's
Correct.
pretty literal, but I never heard a motion and second to adjourn not get voted in approval. I think you're good.
We're going to sign off now. Thank you, everybody. I hope
Thank
this was
you.
informative and we'll be able to move forward. I'll see you all next week.
See you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.